Hello out there in TV land. Thank you for joining. We are in, I think, the final panel for PJCon, so I hope everyone's been having a good weekend. My name, for people who are probably most of you who don't know me, is Arcadia, aka DJ Bug. Um, yeah, I'm a DJ sometimes, and sometimes I work. I did not plan an intro for myself, but I am really happy to be here, and I am really big into back in the olden days in the before times, conning, still into gaming, lots of tabletop. Used to do LARP back in the day. Lots of games by myself. Anyway, that's not an important part. I want to thank everybody, including the guests tonight, for joining for this panel, which is I think, a really important topic for any scene or group, which is talking about allies versus bystanders, and keeping your scene safe. This is something that in my day-to-day work I see a lot of, but then I haven't seen it as much at cons, at least at this point. But what I do see is a lot of situations that come up where maybe there's a particular individual, a particular circumstance, or maybe just an environment at large that makes people uncomfortable or just feel not like they can be part of it. And how can we be better allies and not just stand by, but rather than sitting in our own icky feelings, rather than letting somebody else experience that, what can we do to make a positive active change, and make our spaces more inclusive for everyone so that we can all have fun and be wacky and goofy in our own ways. Again, my name is Arcadia Rodriguez-Ruiz. My pronouns are she, her. I am white and on my mom's side, indigenous on my dad's side, and I'm really happy to be here, to hear what everyone has to say about how we can make this discussion grow in our scene. So I guess I'll call people out and then let people introduce themselves. So if you just want to introduce yourself a little bit about why you're here, and just for like a soft question start off, what book or other media are you currently really into right now? Like what are you reading or watching or playing that you're like, hell yeah? So we'll start with Sereia.
Hi, my name is Sereia. My pronouns are they, them. I am black. I am black. I'm black and non-binary, and right now I have been alternating between playing Skyrim and playing Animal Crossing, because if I'm not stealing and sniping the city guard for sport, I like to build bridges and houses and make my island look pretty. Hmm. So yeah.
It's it is a sight to behold. I'm not gonna lie. Some of the most entertaining nights over like the last year and a half is just watching Sereia navigate the wild world of Skyrim.
You just
But
say that because I punished Serana the other night.
listen, okay, no, we're gonna deal with that another day. But like, okay, so hi, my name's Bishop. I work in Chesterfield County Public Libraries, which is related because I did a panel at PJCon earlier today regarding how to get the most out of your public libraries. And so media wise right now I'm kind of torn between a few things. I have recently finished the manga for Haikyuu, and so now I am awaiting with bated breath for season 5 when that eventually drops. But currently, I am also keeping pace with the manga for My Hero Academia, which like is very funny now that I think about it, because like the question of like allies versus bystanders does actually come up in multiple points in that story. But that could be its own other panel if I'm being perfectly honest. But yeah, I am also black. I don't think there's much else in my family line that I know of as of right now. So we got that pure concentrated experience.
Probably fucking just given what I know about Anyway, I'm gonna shut the fuck up.
Nope, you should keep talking.
Say that, and then say that, and then I'm upset because Ronald Reagan died before I had a chance to put him in the ground myself.
And the panel's off to a great start.
Yeah, I was like, you just have to find a spiritual practice where you can go and beat his ass on another plane of existence.
What's the plan?
There's still time.
Find him in Tartarus.
Knowing my luck, my punishment is not being sent to hell where I can torment Ronald Reagan. It's going to be sent to heaven. Anyway.
So
Pat
yeah.
yeah.
Hi, I'm Pat.
Hey.
If you're on this stream, you probably know who I am. But just in case, I am a DJ and Twitch streamer. Occasionally streaming video games, but often streaming music. I have been involved with one goth scene or another since I was 16, which was 24 years ago now. Good God. I've hosted radio show streams. I've also run a bunch of LARPs. I basically ran a LARP universe for about 8 or 9 years with several different games in that universe. And so I've been in a lot of different scenes. I'm non-binary. Pronouns are they, them. And I am white. And pretty much as far as I know, just white all the way back.
We forgive you for it.
Yeah, you shouldn't.
It's not your fault, Pat. It's not.
So things that I'm really excited about right now. Obviously, I could mention music and stuff because that's all I do on Twitch. But I've also television show I've consumed multiple times now is Centaur World, which I cannot say enough about because it is one of the most outlandishly goofy and darkest cartoons I've ever seen in my life. So, and it's also a musical. So, dope.
I like dark. I actually watched the first episode and wanted to do more. I realized I didn't share any. Go ahead.
Yeah, it just gets crazier from there. The second episode is when it just kind of hits you in the head. So,
yeah.
Starter.
Nice. Yeah, I realized I didn't share anything, but I think I really, if you haven't watched Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts, I just watched that. Rewatched that. It's so good. It's so good. Watch it. Oh, it's the best. And then I am also reading A Close and Common Orbit, which is the second book in the Wayfarer series, which I highly recommend. But yeah, anyway, so cool. Awesome. Again, thank you all for being here. I'm really excited because besides Pat, I don't know Bishop and Sereia, so I'm just excited to take this opportunity to get to know each other a little bit better too. But coming back to the idea of what we're here about in bystander intervention, I think we could just kind of start at the beginning and you know, what in your mind really delineates a bystander from an ally, and what do you think is essential to being a good ally, particularly maybe as it relates to the scene and specific things that are more likely to come up there than other places.
And this can be any scene.
Yeah, and scene is really generic in this time because that can mean anything. So that can be goth alternative music scenes. It can be con scenes for any kind of gaming, anime, fantasy. I feel like all of those, in my experience in the past however many years, there's definite Venn diagram overlapping. So if it feels right to bring it up, then it counts.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess for me, like the difference between a bystander and an ally is like passive versus active. Whereas like an ally, you are actively choosing sometimes violence. But like you're doing it actively, whereas like bystander, you're just kind of passive.
Yeah, I think that like that's like a very like solid base because it does kind of cover a lot of ground. Because like when I think of bystanders, I specifically think of people who are watching, but either through choice or like through inability or whatever is going on, they are not like taking any sort of stance or anything that might cost them anything. Basically, it's that thing you do where like you're in like the Walmart and like you see like a fight start and you see that it happened, but you just kind of look around and then quickly go somewhere else, anywhere else, really. And that's like an obvious on the face example. But like another subtle kind of bystander that I really think about is, so I've been at trying to get my undergrad degree for a while. Like I graduated from high school in 2013, and like due to a combination of factors, like I just graduated this year in 2021. And so I have been in a lot of classrooms where I have had to have some really tense and awkward and uncomfortable like conversations with like professors who didn't know any better. And like the kind of bystander that personally irks me is the person who will look uncomfortable in the middle of the class and not say anything when they know something is wrong. And then after the class, far away, they'll pull me aside and be like, I really appreciated what you had to say today in class. Like,
yeah.
Because that is the sort of thing that lets me know that A, you saw the problem, B, you knew that there was like an opportunity for you to say something or take a stand or like, you know, throw your hat in the ring, but you chose not to. But also, you want to encourage the person who did, so that way you don't need to get your hands dirty in the process.
Oh yeah.
Like that is the sort of bystander that like tends to piss me off the most. Are the people who are aware of the full extent of the problem, but like either wash their hands of it or think that, what can I do? Right? Because like all it takes is 15 people in a room to think, what can I do? And then there's only like things just go south from there.
Or worse, they say, "Oh, thank you for saying something." It's like, you could have said something too. Could have backed me up.
So like that's the bystander part.
Like woke and no spine.
Yeah.
I'll even jump on that a little bit further. And this is someone that I used to be, even the type of bystander that is especially problematic when it's someone that's like running an event where they know that something bad is happening, but they also don't want to cause conflict that could quote unquote negatively impact the event that they're putting on. So they just try to be as diplomatic as possible, and diplomatic is not the same thing as supportive. That's a huge deal that I wish like I could go back and slap me from 20 years ago and make them realize that they're not the same thing. And that sometimes to be supportive, you can't be diplomatic, because if you're trying to calm down both sides, and if you're trying to give both sides an air to or a space to air their grievances, you're therefore, whether you mean to or not, legitimizing both sides, and sometimes both sides are not legitimate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like diplomacy is like useful when it's like, oh, these two people hate each other for no reason, but like you don't want to be diplomatic to like, well, you know, he abused her, but like,
and I think I kind of want to build on that point that you made, Pat, about diplomacy, because the idea of being diplomatic tends to be, to be diplomatic, you have to have like two people who are in relatively similar positions of like power and authority, such that like any contest between them would be like uncertain and potentially like risky for all involved. But like trying to be diplomatic when there is a power balance in between the two parties is basically just like giving the people with more power the ability to pretend like they are standing on the same foot as the people that like they are leveraging that power against.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. I think that this kind of makes a nice segue into the second part of this that I see, and I'll sort of share a little bit of a recent experience that had to me happened to me in a group. It was a race justice, equity, and love committee. So like this is what we were talking about, and within that experience, one of the people on the committee made a pretty egregious microaggression towards another person, and I recognized it. I felt it. I was like, this is not right, and I realized that I was just kind of like, okay, that was shitty, but didn't say anything. And the reason I hadn't said anything was because of that horrible thought of, well, I've experienced that before and it sucks that this is interactions. Like that was my first thought. So it's kind of along the same lines as the like try it's like, well, let's just gloss this over and like so we can get on, and like trying to be diplomatic in a diplomatic situation. And I immediately realized I had fucked up and like just, but all this coming back. And so that's something that I'm actively kind of working on now, is how to sort of appreciate myself and appreciate others enough to recognize those ouch moments and acknowledge them, because I felt like I let that individual down because I was so used to letting myself down. So how is a good way, or what are good ways that you would suggest as far as I mean, I think one of the big things when trying to have these discussions and working situations like that is acknowledging the ouch moment. What is the thing that happened? Not trying to be diplomatic again, acknowledging that like this is not a normal thing, this is not an okay thing, and how do we call attention to it to begin to have that conversation?
Honestly, at least in my personal experience, the tough thing about having to acknowledge those ouch moments is that they are all context specific. So, like, in each situation, you have different people, different histories, different cultures, different, like, regions. Like, there's so many individual things that are at play that doing any sort of meaningful redress requires the ability and the willingness to take all of those individual pieces into your mind when you're figuring out how to respond. Because if you don't, there are frequently a lot of like breadcrumbs or hints or like things that should theoretically be blindingly obvious that you will just trip over because you think you know what you're supposed to do, right? And so for me, I find that one of the common things that I try to do when I have to like make someone acknowledge like, hey, what you said was kind of messed up, is like to roll with what they said completely and utterly seriously, in the sense that like there was one incident at a previous job where it was like a sales job, and so the store manager was like trying to figure out what new items to get for like her for the store, because like we were starting to approach a couple of Jewish holidays, which was interesting. And so like because like the two people who were at the desk were me and one of my colleagues who is Jewish.
Okay,
And so yeah. And so like she turned to him and was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Do Jews love to shop? And so like, it was pretty good. And so in that moment, my brain was like, I don't think she fully processes the implications of what she just said. And so what came out of my mouth was, I don't know, do whites? And like the look on her face was very much the one of somebody who had not taken the time to see if that would apply across the board. And she was very clearly embarrassed about it, but like it did create an opening for my coworker to basically be like, yeah, probably shouldn't do that again. And like it's So the reason I say that, like, sometimes the illustrative example could be to, like, take the thing that they are saying and basically be like, okay, so if this is like the idea or the ideology that you are presenting is correct and just, how does it work when applied in other scenarios? Like, have you thought this through? Like, if you can find a moment that, like, basically is the verbal equivalent of, do you wish to save before you continue? That's like something you definitely want to try and capitalize on.
Yeah, like, I just remember this story. I was telling me about it, and I was like,
No, that was a wild day. There's a reason that me and the store manager did not get along very much after that. Because, like, from that point, she was also aware that if she said some out of the way stuff again, that I had no problem, like, interjecting in that way. And so it did create some tension in the workplace, but it was a tension that meant that, like, my coworker wasn't getting, like, questioned in that way anymore. So, like, yeah, it made the situation a little bit more uncomfortable for the person making the situation uncomfortable in the first place.
I think that that actually brings up a good point, is that just making sure that it doesn't make it more uncomfortable for the person that you're trying to defend, though.
yeah,
Absolutely. That's a huge one.
yeah, I've had that happen where people are like, they rush into like defend, like diffuse, defend, whatever D word, and I'm just kind of like, afterwards, I'm like, I wish you had just shut the fuck up and let me handle it, because now I'm like, great, now we're all sitting here with spicy armpits. So, like, yeah, trying to think. The only one that's coming to mind was like, it was actually just public shaming, which is sometimes not what you want to just default to, because then it makes them hostile. But this person was a repeat offender. At one of the jobs that I worked. One of the jobs that I worked at a museum and tourist attraction museum, whatever you want to call it. And we got a call about a family that wanted to come visit, but they were asking about a sign language interpreter, which we did not have because we had a staff of like 15 people max on a good day. And apparently this was the first, I refuse to believe this, but also we were kind of out of the way. This was like the first time that it had happened, or at least where somebody had called, and nobody knew what to do. The people who were above my pay grade, basically. And so we were all like standing around, like talking about it. And apparently they had told them that we don't provide that, you have to bring your own, which is the wrong thing to say, because it is in fact illegal.
Oh,
And so I can't remember the exact details, but the people basically told them like, no, you're supposed to provide this for us. And one of my coworkers, as we were hearing about this story, because they were just letting us know that like, hey, there might be a day that this happens when you're here, and they might come through the site. And like, the management was a little pissed because it was to get an interpreter, it was gonna cost like, wasn't even gonna cost that much money. But one of my coworkers was basically like, well, I guess we need to increase their ticket by that price, because I don't understand why we should have to cover that for them. They're the ones with the problem. And I just looked at him and I was like, name redacted, you're an ableist asshole. And sometimes you have to just be like, you have to just say like, I'm not going to beat around the bush. You're just being an asshole, racist, ableist, whateverist. And like, explain to him, like, how the fuck do you think that's fair? Like, so sometimes the direct approach is necessary, but as I said, this person was a repeat offender, and anyway, so pick your poison, I guess. Read the situation too.
Yep.
Because there's sometimes where, like, you do have to think, you have to be able to think on your feet and think, like, okay, should I take the time to sit here and explain it to you? Should I try to use, like, well, think about it from this point of view, or should I just straight up and just be like, no, like, that's not okay?
And
Well, I think
like,
it's also an issue of safety there. Like,
Yeah.
if someone's doing something or saying something very unsafe, that's when everybody around just needs to band together and go, no, GTFO. Come back when you're not a threat.
Yeah.
And relatedly, an important part of being able to build that kind of environment does require you to be willing to, like, when you are designing or creating your spaces, making that sort of like culture, making that sort of like mindfulness, making that sort of consideration a core part of why you are making your decisions.
Yeah.
Like when you are deciding, hey, what are the rules for my space? Like you do need to take those extra like few steps of like thinking through, if my rules are practiced exactly as I say them, what will be the outcome? If they are deliberately misinterpreted, what will be the outcome? What are the sorts of like boundaries and limitations that I can put in place that are unattractive to the kinds of people who will make this place unsafe?
And
Like,
And I hate to say it. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and be willing to stand by that. Like,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's the other half of that, because like I hate to be that kind of person, but when I create spaces at this point, I just kind of assume that at some point in time, a racist, sexist, homophobic, abusive asshole is going to show up because they like what I'm doing. And so what am I going to do to make sure that that is absolutely not tolerated there? And you need to have that plan ahead of time, and you don't need to be thinking about it when that person shows up if you are an event organizer.
Yep.
And like
Yeah.
having that extra, sorry,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and like having that extra little bit of like, okay, I've made a plan. The plan exists for a reason. Now we need to enforce it. Like, because here's the thing, the more barriers there are in between someone doing the right thing, then like the less likely they are to do it. And this includes like us. So like making it as easy and as like reasonable and as comfortable as possible to like be an actually like decent and like not bigoted like piece of like excrement, like make it as easy as you can, because then the ones who want to will have that extra little bit of push and security to take that final step, and the ones who aren't, you cannot then say, oh well, there was this thing in the way, or like, oh well, like make there be as few excuses as possible so that decisions are harder to contest.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Because it's important for it to be accessible. Like, I've been in spaces where it's like you don't even know like where to start to report or like bring to attention, because it's like I do burlesque, and like our scene used to be just a bunch of loose pockets. So if you were having trouble like with somebody being a piece of shit at the time, there was really no way to like who are you gonna tell, basically? Kind of like, okay, well, like I will tell, like, obviously if you're at a show you tell the producer, but or like afterwards, but then it's just kind of like, well, I mean, what do you want me to do about it? I can just not book them, which, you know, is like, I mean, yeah, but
Yeah.
the problem when it's like, but that's your husband's friend or whatever. So like putting things in place to make it more accessible, and like knowing like, hey, you can talk to any one of these people. Um, let us know what's going on, and we will take care of it so you don't have to.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah, I think this is kind of getting closer to like the sort of idea of like how to be a good ally within a particular scene too, right? Because it's not just, I mean, inclusion statements are great, they're awesome and they should be there, but when you're trying to create a safe space, what is the policy and the course of action you're going to take to make that grounded in reality when this
yeah.
happens? And I think especially in groups like in cons and music scenes where there are those kind of complicated relationships of chances are it's not just like somebody you do music with, but it's somebody that you've also gotten coffee with or is married to your sister or whatever. And you know how, and I think having, knowing what your course of action is going to be ahead of time helps alleviate when that happens, so you're not stuck in this conundrum of, oh well, you know, I know them and I see them all the time, you know, I don't want to make this weird for myself or anybody else, or what is this going to do? And like, you know, how do you ostracize someone that maybe for a long period of time, which is really, I mean, it's not ostracizing it, they're bringing it on themselves, let's admit that. But you know, somebody who's maybe been, you know, a cornerstone of the community for a long time, and it's like it turns out that they're still a piece of shit, you know, what are you going to do to enforce that? And having those kind of guidelines and talking about what that would look like ahead of time makes that a little bit easier to, it's still icky, it's always going to feel icky, but it makes you have something to hold on to.
The thing about it is that until the offending person um, receives consequences for it, they're going to keep doing it.
Right.
Like that's something that I don't think we recognize enough or we do enough about. Because like, so there's a person that all three of us know, Bishop, Sereia, and I, that was all involved with a LARP that we were all involved with at one point or another. I'm not going to name their name because they've transitioned at this point, and I don't know the new name, and I don't want to dead name them. But we're just going to talk about this person. But I'm sure you people know exactly who I'm talking about, as just an abusive person. And the thing is that at one point in time, I was the one, despite being one of the people putting it on and them being another one, I was one of the people being abused by them. And I was hiding it and I was trying to fix it on my own because I didn't want to damage the whole community by letting by letting this out in the open. And you know what happened? They did it to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing changed until I came forward and other people came forward, and then something happened about it. And that's true for every instance of abuse and racist or homophobic or sexist behavior that I've seen in scenes. It's like it doesn't matter if it's your wife's friend or the person that like started this club night that you're going to, or the head of a label that's promoting all of these bands. Who if you don't give them consequences for it, regardless of the context of who they are going to keep doing it.
Yep. And like that was kind of the issue that like we ran into, because like when it was time to like try and like do something about them, like we've had to find out like, oh god, how far does this go? Like,
Yeah.
how many people specifically have been on the receiving end of this, and how many of them have been deliberately isolated from each other this entire time? And like checking your stories, understanding like, oh god, so this happened to you too. And like basically one of the most important things that happened with regard to actually getting it resolved was being able, like, having the courage to be like, hey, have y'all been going through this too? And like the other thing that you kind of have to be prepared for, which I wasn't, which it stung for a while, but like if things are that bad, you do have to be prepared for the possibility that, especially if there isn't like existing infrastructure or consequences in place, you have to be prepared for the possibility that doing the right thing may mean that your scene disbands, right? Like that was the big kicker in that situation, because like, yeah, we did everything we could to like confront them with like, yo, you cannot keep doing this.
And then they proceeded to gaslight the hell out of everybody there.
Everyone in the room. And so like, because of that, there was no like plan. There was no, if somebody is like doing all of this nonsense, what is the response? And because none of that was there, none of us were sure how to proceed when they refused to accept the consequence that like was voted on. So disintegrated. And like,
now it's on site.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there is that thing that you have to, I guess what I'm getting at is, from now on, whenever a confrontation has to happen like that, you have to have the resolve to know that, like, you have to do the right thing, even if it means that this iteration of this thing will cease to exist.
And I think that's a really, oh, go ahead, Sereia, go ahead.
I was just agreeing, and it's like, or also you might just have to be prepared to walk away because
because everybody else is willing to put up with it.
There's an unfortunate thing that and I think this is another one of those things that's going to divide allies from bystanders, is you have to decide what is more important to you, that this event or this scene or this group, whatever, continues to exist, or that people in it are not being oppressed or abused. And if the scene is more important to you than the safety, be it physical or emotional safety, if the scene itself is more important to you than that safety, then that scene deserves to die.
Correct.
And then the other thing is, too, is like, do you really care about that scene if you're willing to put up with a toxic, problematic, harmful person? Because clearly you don't care about the scene because
the scene is people.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's like, I think Sereia, maybe you were mentioning iterations of a particular thing and being able to walk away from that, because I think that's the thing. I mean, and I've talked about this in other things, but if what you're doing is really, pure and there's a joy in it that comes beyond just the people, it is going to last beyond it might not last in the form that it's currently in, but your joy in that and the people that are being true to each other will outlive that and change and be and exist in some other way. Even, I mean, the three of you were in that incident and here you are together. It hasn't, so it's like really the only thing that's burned away is the parts that needed to be burned away. And it feels like a loss at the time, but the things that need to survive will survive past that. But it's a hard, it's going to be a difficult thing. And I think this is, one thing I did want to kind of circle back to real fast, that the idea of another thing about not having like clear, policies and courses of action in situations like this is it makes the person who is being victimized at the time also feel isolated, because they don't know if there's a safe person to go to or what the procedure would be with that. So another way of being a good ally is kind of front loading your allyship. Like if something does happen, know that, don't wait for something to happen. Be prepared so that they know that it's safe to come to someone if something does happen.
Oh, yeah. Like, ironically,
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, that did wind up being something that, like, happened with, like, a LARP that we used to go to, like, last year before everything kind of disintegrated in March of 2020.
Why? Like, why did things disintegrate in March of 2020? What happened?
What happened?
Do I have some news for you?
Already coronavirus.
Is that why we're all in these little window boxes?
But, like, yeah, it was interesting because there were some issues that were happening, like, that some of the LARPers of color in that particular event were experiencing.
Yeah.
And like eventually we all started talking to each other, basically like, hey, did you see this too? Like, am I jumping to conclusions?
Am I tripping?
Yeah. And like a lot of people don't necessarily realize that, like, yes, and those conversations do happen, even if you're not necessarily privy to them.
It's like one of the things that I always say is, y'all do realize Black people talk to each other, right?
Yeah.
Like, we talk to each other.
And the reason we do is because we have to, right? Because, like, in a lot of cases, the best people equipped to recognize anti-Blackness where it shows up is Black people. Because, like, a lot of people who don't have that experience, either deliberately or through ignorance, do not have, like, the XP required to recognize those threats.
Yeah, and it ended up, like, what ended up happening is the game ended up folding too. But before it folded, one of our friends was victimized by it, and ended up leaving, and we were all just like, all right, well, I guess we're just gonna find something else to do, because fuck this shit.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do have to be, that is another just like pro tip. If there is somebody that you have good reason to trust the judgment of, especially if they are like more marginalized than not, and you see them preparing to make an exit, it is in your best interest to figure out why.
Yeah.
100%.
And, like, honestly, if it hadn't folded, which it would have folded.
Yeah.
It would have folded because,
Well, that's it right there. That, like, we've kind of been circling around that is a lot of promoters and a lot of people that run events will make that mistake of, oh, well, you know, if I try to address this thing, then the event might fold. It's gonna unfold, or it's gonna fold anyway if abuse keeps happening.
yeah.
You get to decide where you are as it folds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's
like-
good. Yeah.
It's just kind of like, it's been also my experience that, like, coming from, like, the perspective of race, that a lot of times, like, if they're racist, they're probably also something else too.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know why. You just collect being shitty like Pokemon. But, like, it's been my experience that, like, if they're racist, I'm like, they're probably also misogynistic too. They're also probably homophobic and transphobic, which is, like, just being fucking tastic.
A lot of it is a cascade, yeah.
But it's also just kind of like, I've seen it where, like, a problem will be raised by, like, the Black players, the Black members of the scene, the Black performers, or whatever, and everyone's just like, you just, I mean, are you sure? I don't know. I don't think so. And then we're like, all right, well, time to go. And then you find out later that it was like, oh my God, did you know that XYZ was doing this? And you're just kind of like, you're gotta be kidding me.
So,
Like-
a performer in the scene that I will not name because I do not want this panel to be banned for libel, because that's what tends to happen. But when a lot of people finally started coming out and saying this against this person, it was interesting because a bunch of people were like, "Oh no, really? I can't believe this!" And everybody who's lived in this Charlottesville goth scene for like the past 5 years is like, "Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
mm-hmm."
It's kind of like, I think the thing that I really wish that, like, people with, like, lots of intersections of privilege, like, I wish the thing that they would realize is that it is not just in the best interest of marginalized people to, like, do what is necessary to, like, make sure that, like, the scene is, like, safe and protective of them, but, like, it is personally beneficial to them, even if they don't necessarily see how in the moment. because like, yeah, sure, you might have a person who says like the occasional like microaggressive kind of racist thing, and like it doesn't hurt you at the time, but then you watch those like people of color that you've been bonding with over like the last few years, you see them packing up and going to leave, and you're trying to figure out why, and like the response is cagey, and it's just like, oh, they don't trust me to know what's going on. Shit. And then at that point, it's too late. And then, like, from there, the person that he could have been dealt with, like, a couple of years ago, like, has had chance to kind of, like, build connections, settle in ties, like, become the friendly local parasite of the whole organism. And so then, trying to get them removed is, like, pulling teeth. And, like...
Or you have to put in so much more work. Mm-hmm. Like, there used to be a producer in our scene who was famous for making what people used to say, oh, they just make gaffes. and I was on one of the receiving end of one of their gaffes, and at the time I was very new, and I was just kind of like, I wasn't the person that I am now. And I was just kind of like, that gaff felt very racially charged. Mm-hmm. And it ended up, you know, as more of us started talking and we were like, did they say this to you? Yeah, they said some fucked up shit to me too. You know, it just became a problem to the point that, you know, no person of color would work with them. They were having trouble even finding people, white performers, to perform with them. But it was also a headache for their business partner, because then they had to keep that person on a short leash instead of dealing with it and knowing, like, great, like, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do anything now. I'm gonna have to make sure you don't fuck this up for us. And it's just like, if you had just listened.
And imagine how your business would be if you had cut that person out when they weren't as important.
Yeah, that's the big one. It's just like,
and then it becomes too little, too late, because another part of that is trust. There's a game that for a very long time had a problem where, from what we could see, it was like, I don't think this game is made for people of color.
Yep.
I don't think I want to go to this game, and it makes me question people who go to this game. And I guess they finally realized, oh shit, we have a problem now, because, you know, in this age of I guess we live in a post-racial society. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, that was fine.
I mean, I don't see race.
Post-racial society, CRT, whatever. They were like, oh God, we got to fix this. And they are, to their credit, trying to fix it, but it's just also kind of like too little too late, because it's like, now I don't trust you to fix it properly.
Yeah.
Because you didn't see a problem with it for so long. How do you know what to fix?
Yeah. And like with that, sorry, I realized that you were about to...
No, go ahead. No, your voice, please.
Fair. So, like, with that same LARP that Sereia was referring to, it kind of ties back into something that I was getting on about earlier, which is that, like, frequently it is not just in, like, the best interest of the people you're looking, like, who stand to be the most harmed, to, like, keep things on the up and up, but it'll also save you personally trouble. And so what we saw was that in that rules document, there was a bunch of like cultural and like faction stuff that was just based in some really fucked up stuff.
They had the Confederacy as a playable faction.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And so yeah. And so there's all of that rigmarole about
get the fuck out of town.
Oh no, the worst part was they tried very hard to justify it, and I was like, you created more work for yourself trying to justify this than if you had just been like, no, we can't do this. And now you also had to spend more money fixing the game and hiring people to undo the mistake, where if you had just from jump been like, we should probably not do this. You should probably, or like with a problematic person, like if you had just sat down and said, look, what you're doing is unacceptable. You're being an ableist asshole. You need to go.
Yeah.
Or you're being racist or whatever. Or even if you want to come at it from like the nice, kindly, like, look, I just don't think that some of the things that you say are a little problematic, and we think it would just be best if you unassociated yourself forcefully with this. And now you have to go back and do not
Damage
only you have to go back and do
control,
damage
so
control. You have to do so much damage control, and even if you do all the damage control, people still might not trust you. Like that producer I was talking about, I guess they tried to do damage control. I wouldn't call it damage control. It was more like making it worse. But it was to the point where they had to quit doing this art form that they really liked.
And so, like, in that particular scenario, like, with all of the crap in the faction guide, we knew to avoid it simply based on those grounds because it was revealing of the kind of concessions they would make in order to save, like, what their idea of the game was. And then, years later, like, they made changes to, like, the costuming requirements to such an extent that even people who had been there for such a long time would then have to buy period level gear when that had never been required before. And so then people were like, wait, you can't do that. That cuts out a bunch of people from being able to attend this thing. And then, like, from our perspective, it was like, yeah, that's the sort of thing that, like, if they're willing to cut away, like, the things that would make, like, people of color feel safe, then of course they're willing to be a little bit classist on top of that in service of their vision. Like,
one of the things that I talk about a lot, I'm also a historian by trade. One of the things that I talk about a lot, I deal very heavily with like CRT and like slavery and the history of white supremacy. Is one of the things that I will constantly say is like white supremacy fucks over white people too. For like a historical example, in Virginia, it was illegal for a black person to testify against a white person. And, you know, they thought, ha, we gotcha. Up until George Wythe was murdered, and the only person who saw his murderer commit the murder, was poisoned, was his black housekeeper. And she saw him do it because he poisoned her too. He poisoned George Wythe, her and her child from a coffee pot. But because of the law at the time, he got off. He was acquitted because the only witness could not testify. And that just also proves that, like, you know, they will eventually, you will get hoisted by your own, was it petard?
Yeah, that's the one.
And it's just, you know, you should be doing it because you're stopping it and being a good ally because you're a good person. But eventually they're going to hurt you too because they clearly do not give a fuck. Like, if they gave a fuck, they wouldn't do it. And it's just a matter of not if they do it, but when they do it.
And people don't want to see like this binary us versus them thing. Everyone really wants to just focus in shades of gray, and in certain things, like, you know, which Star Trek is better, I see that as being acceptable. But when someone is being oppressed, if you try to like, oh well, you know, they're a good person, we should try to give them a chance to fix their shit. If you do that, you are enabling them to keep doing it. And you may not want to live in that world. You may not like that. You may not like the fact that, okay, I have to come down on this abusive, sexist, racist person. But you have to, because that's the binary that they have made. The oppressed person didn't make that binary.
Correct.
The person that's being oppressive has decided one is better than the other.
Correct.
And if you don't side against them for that, they're going to just assume you agree with them, and they're going to be emboldened to do more.
Yep.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm curious, do any of you watch The Expanse or have read The Expanse?
I don't. I actually never mind. I don't watch The Expanse. I had a bad experience with somebody whose favorite series was The Expanse.
Oh. Well, I've had that happen to me with other series that I like. The only reason I was bringing it up is because I think that recently, it's interesting to me just because I feel like they've tackled a lot of concepts that other sci-fi shows have kind of failed at, and it is originally like it was based on books that were written by two like cis het white guys. So it's like, but I mean, I think especially with the show, in a lot of ways they've known to get out of the way when they needed to. But the thing that I was going to bring up is a scenario that happened that totally just screwed up the whole storyline, and it didn't matter how they like what. So four main characters. One of the main characters, it turns out the actor was a predatory piece of shit who was was harassing and threatening women that were on the show. And as soon as they found out about it, the other three main characters, the producers, the writers, were all, and like literally like somebody told them about it, and they immediately went public and were like we completely.
Uh-oh, we lost Arcadia.
Oh no! Damn you.
Oh no.
Made it to the end of the show. They
there
killed
we
him.
go.
Oh, sorry.
You cut out.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, now my internet connection's stable. Sorry. Anyway, the actor, Cass Anvar, they fired him. They killed off the character, even though that character was supposed to last for, three or four more books, until the end of the show. They were just like, oh, well, I guess we just have to change. And there's one more season left on the show. And they're just like, whatever, fuck it. And, completely, and I think that's the thing is it's like, one of the things to think about when there's like, well, I hate to act on this because I don't want to ruin this thing that we have set up, is putting the fault purely, like, completely in the court of the person who fucked up. I mean, is it really their fault that they had to fire Cass Anvar because he was a, like, piece of shit who was preying on people who were cast and fans? It's not their fault. It's probably his fault.
Yep.
So he's the one who fucked it up. And I wanted to share that really quickly just because I thought that it was just a really excellent way on a pretty like mainstream like show to just like be like, fuck it. It's not our fault. Like this happened and we have to deal with it. And if things get like we can change a storyline. We're good writers. We can do this.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing that I've talked with like other people about it and about these things, and it usually is like white cishet guys, to be fair, and they're like, yeah, but I've done some terrible things in my time, and I want people to, I wouldn't have become as good as I am now if people wouldn't have helped me out to become better. And I'm like, okay, yeah, people helped you out to become better, but I used to be a really shit, like none of you knew me in my 20s. I was absolutely like, we're talking a reversed racist believing. Yeah, no, I was one of those people.
Cringing.
Yeah, no, I was awful. And yeah, and it was, yes, being educated helped, but also being told to shut the fuck up helped too. Because I hated that. I hate being told that. And I'm like, oh, why are you being so mean? Oh, I'm being an asshole. You're not being mean. These are just consequences. Right. And like, and the way that I see that now is that, yes, I want people to be like, helpful for me, but I also recognize that if someone were to come up to me like that knew me in those days and go, you know what, I don't care what you're doing now. You said some really fucking harmful things back then. And I still have trouble being around you. I'm like, you know what, that's fair. I wouldn't want to be around me either. So you have to ask yourself, if you really care about being a better person, if you're not willing to take responsibility for those actions, then you're not willing to face the responsibility on other people. And so how much of an ally are you? Yep. How much of an improved person are you if you're not willing to both dish out those consequences and accept them yourself?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that
and
meme.
Sometimes you lose opportunities.
Yeah, it's like that meme where it's like you ever meet like a white dude and it's clear that nobody ever told him to shut the fuck up a day in his life. It's like that. And like, we also, all three of us knew a person who we met through the same organization.
True.
Where it was clear that nobody had ever told them to shut the fuck up until we told them to shut the fuck up. And they couldn't handle it. They just could not handle it. And it's just, they fancied themselves an ally.
Yeah, that was the worst of
They
it.
fancied themselves an ally, and they were just being harmful in the name of helping, in the name of helping. And it was just kind of like, now, even if they've like changed, I'm like, I don't trust you.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
don't trust, and being okay with that, like, that's hard, but that's growth.
You know, the thing is that no matter how hard it is to deal with the fact that someone doesn't, like in my personal experience, that someone doesn't trust me, I bet it's a lot harder to be that person who doesn't trust me now. I bet that anything that I feel about not being trustworthy, it pales in comparison to the experience they had to go through. That is the reason they don't trust me anymore.
Yeah,
Yep.
I have, because I clearly know how to pick them. I have an ex who was just an abusive, horrible person. Was like reverse racist, didn't realize it at the time, all this shit. And afterwards I was just kind of like, I hope you just become a better person and
Away
away from me. And now they occasionally try to reach out, not just to me but to my friends, just to be like, hey, I'm doing better, I'm a better person. And it's just kind of like, well, that's good for you, but every time I see your name, I want to fucking I want to do violence to you. But I know that that's part of the reason that they just can't accept the fact that, like, I don't care that they're doing better, because all I remember is the shitty things that they said to me and the way that it made me feel, and that's something that they're just going to have to live with.
Yep.
And if they're trying to be a better person, then take that feeling and just be like, I can't let this happen again.
Yeah.
Also the reason why I don't like The Expanse.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That sucks because it really is a great show, but I totally understand that. There are like definitely books and shows that I have been unable to touch for similar reasons. So, I that sucks that they ruined that for you.
Okay. One
But
day, one
yeah.
day I'm gonna move away from it and be like, all right, let me time to see what the hype is.
Yeah, in your time. But yeah, so there is actually one question that we just got in the chat, which I think is actually kind of just with where we are in time, a good way to sort of wrap things up and maybe give some nuggets of advice, which is how can organizers with privilege be including and listening to minorities in the scene before a problem arises?
Don't talk to us after you have already decided how you want it to look.
Yep.
Like, the biggest annoyance that I tend to find in like the jobs that I've been in and like the classroom settings that I've been in is people who will ask me my opinion and like how it will affect me as like a black dude after they have already published the syllabus, after they have already like started planning the schedule, after they have already made decisions about who they want to book, after they've already made decisions about who's going to be like sitting in the same room as the people that you're now trying to be cognizant of, right? And so a lot of it is about making those inclusive choices prior to trying to figure out like what the end product looks like. It has to start from the beginning, because otherwise there are steps that you are very likely to miss.
And in that same vein, if you've already done it, you've got to be okay with being able to change it. If being able to change it and understanding that, yes, I know you put a lot of work into this. I know this is your baby. I know, but I'm telling you right now, you need to change this. I do a lot of things. I do like some sensitivity reading and consulting for different things. A lot of times, just games and LARPs. And one of the things that I have in the contract is, if I tell you to fix something, are you going to fix it?
Yep.
So, if you are not getting them involved from jump, but when you do bring them in, you got to be okay with changing it and knowing that you're going to have to put in some extra work to fix it, when you could have just had someone involved from jump. And also to pay them for be willing to pay them for their labor. There's a
And fuck your pizza party, quite frankly.
there's a
Oh,
there's a tweet set going around about, it's not their job to educate you, but how can you get that education? And it was like following people and listening to their words and stuff like that. And one of the things I would just go far to say that if you do that and you use something that they have put out or an experience, you need to pay them for that, because you're now benefiting from it. And it's like, I'm not putting this out here. Sometimes I am putting this out here because I'm like, man, if just one person can just learn from what I'm trying to say, that would be great. But also, I'm not just putting this out there for you to lurk and use freely.
The last thing we need is like, because like I work in the library field, right? And like it always rattles my bones when I see that like a diversity, equity, and inclusion workshop is going to be led by yet another white cishet woman. Like it is just kind of grating in a way that I don't think is easy for me to convey, because like from the beginning it makes it clear that you have misunderstood the assignment.
Yeah. And just, it also just kind of goes back, like, from separating, like, not just at an organizational level, but you as a person. Like, do you not have friends of color? Do you not have friends who are of different genders, sexual identities in your personal life? Then, when you come to your professional and you're like, well, where do I start? You should probably start with you as a person.
Yep.
Because from there you can carry it into the professional. And it's also just kind of like, I don't just want to be known as your like the professional Black person that you can call to help you unfuck shit when you accidentally say something racist. Like, you should not just be doing the work at an organizational level, but personal as well. And just, removing barriers. You should also make it so that you have people of color, of different sexual identities, gender identities in your organization. So you should also be looking at removing barriers
to them staying there.
And to them wanting to come. Like the issue with the costume thing with that game is, I'm like, do you know how many people of color are not going to be able to play your game because they don't know where to get shit, they don't know who to ask, or they might not have the skills, or people who might be disabled, or people who need X, Y, and Z, or just fucking poor people.
Yeah.
Like, do you know how inaccessible you just made your game?
Mm-hmm.
And you already have a problem with being inclusive and being diverse, and you just
added another brick to the wall.
Congratulations, you unlocked the front door, but you locked the gate.
I think one thing to balance between, because there is like this balance of not having people of color or queer people do all of the work, but then also if you're a person of privilege who is an organizer, like, know when to get out of the way. Like, don't feel like you just need to get like consulted and you can like refer to this person whenever, but then you're the person making the final decisions. Maybe, if people are making themselves known as individuals who are wanting to be leaders, wanting to help with decision making, like, shut up and let them do that. That's okay.
Yeah. And also understand that if you ever have a situation where like you get a group of like let's say like a group of Black people comes to you and is just like, hey, we have these problems with this thing. If this doesn't get repaired, we can't continue. Because like I've been involved in a couple of things like that before. And like the thing that people fail to understand is that if they are feeling comfortable coming to you, even if it's uncomfortable, and saying, hey, these are the problems, we would like to figure out ways to solve them, that is a lifeline, not a condemnation. Like, you need to get that, like, if they are willing to be like, look, this fucking sucked, but we know some of the things that you can do to, like, at the very least begin the process of making this, like, healthy. The worst thing you can do is take that as, like, a list of accusations or personal attacks or moral failings, because that's not the point. It's not about you. It's about the impact you're having on other people.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes,
that needs to be, like, addressed.
Especially if they're also saying, I will help you fix it.
Yep.
If they are coming to you and saying, hey, there are these problems, you as the organizer, you need to take care of this, but I'm also willing to help you fix it, that is don't
That's a gift.
That's a gift, and don't spit on it, and don't destroy that trust, because then I can guarantee you that because again, Black people talk, it will get out that, like, oh no, can't trust them.
Like, we tried to work with them to fix these particular problems, but, like, they just got more in their feelings, so, like, don't even bother with them. They will implode on their own.
It's not even worth it, you know? And that's the thing, like, when it comes down to it, it's like, this thing that you created, your organization, your game, your show, your site, your scene, your album, or whatever, TV show, book, like, the worth has just been diminished. And in whatever, yeah, you might incur, like, some short-term goodwill or some short-term whatever, but eventually, like, it's gonna go away, especially when people find out, like, oh, hey, like, don't go see any of this person's shows. They have problems. I talked to them about it. I tried to help them fix it, and they just blew me off. Don't go to it. And then the next thing you know is, like,
wait, why are my crowds looking very white all of a sudden?
Or even worse, like, why can't I book anybody for this show? Why doesn't anybody want to play our game? Why are my book sales going down? And then it's like, well, if you would just listen, you wouldn't be in this situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can't. That was beautifully said. I can't. Nothing to add.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like 13 after the hour. I don't know if anybody has any final parting thoughts, but this has been great. I really appreciate this. Yeah. No. Oh yeah. No. I was. Yeah. No. I was. I don't have any place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, with that, I'm not even, like, completely wrapping up now. I didn't know if there are, like, any parting. I mean, this has been great, and so I didn't know if there were any last things that anyone wanted to share or say, or any follow up, or if anybody has any more questions to throw in the chat. I'll keep going until you all run screaming away.
I guess the other thing is too is just understand that you're going to fuck up. Like, we all fuck up. I fuck up. You fuck up. We all fuck up. We're all gonna fuck up. Nobody is going to be the perfect nobody's gonna be the perfect ally, whatever that Tumblr, TikTok likes to tout as the ideal. And if you fall short of that, you are a horrible, awful person, and you might as well go on ahead and just
give it all.
Just become a skinhead. But, like, you know, you got to be okay with understanding that you're going to fuck up, and sometimes it's not even the fuck up that's harmful. It's how you recover from the fuck up. Like, you know, if you crack, like, if you commit a microaggression and somebody is like, hey, I didn't appreciate that, that's really offensive, it's kind of a microaggression, I'm very sensitive about that, or whatever, and that is that honestly is your opportunity to prove, are you an ally or are you a bystander or are you a like, whatever. And if you're like, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize that, I am going to do better to educate myself, or just a simple, I am sorry, I will do better, without the whole self-flagellation.
Yeah.
That's cool, and that's good. And I don't mean that's cool in like a sarcastic way, but like that shows growth. Whereas if you're just like, well, I don't understand why you're so sensitive about this, or whatever, then it's like, all right, cool, you're a piece of shit.
Yep. And we move on with our day.
We move on with our day. And like,
Stamp.
It's kind of like to what you were saying beforehand, that like if someone is actually coming to you and saying that they were uncomfortable with what happened, if they were done with you, if they were like, nope, you're just a racist piece of shit, they wouldn't be coming to you.
Correct.
Exactly. It's like the whole thing with like, have we moved past call out culture? We're on cancel culture now. I don't know. Accountability, I guess. Where it's like, if people sometimes don't understand that like that point in like calling someone out is still like, I am literally throwing you one last chance.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the benefit of that ouch, right? To be like, to say, if someone says that to you, you're redeemable in their eyes still.
Yeah, like, and if you're just kind of like, absolutely not, and you double down, it always works like this. There is the long-term harm that happens, conversations that happen behind closed doors, the harm continues, finally there's a public call out, and then this always happens. The refuting, the double down, the shitty apology, and then the follow-up apology to the shitty apology, and it's just kind of like, no, I'm done with you at that point.
You just had a fucking temper tantrum in public. I don't want to be around that anymore.
Yeah.
And like this related to that, it's just, I really wish, I mean, even in general, but like this is specifically applicable to what we're talking about, is that there is no moral shame in like falling necessarily, but like the problems come when you refuse to like dust off, pick yourself up, and like figure out what to do next. Like, if you like, nobody is going to blame you for fucking tripping over a rock on your way to like the grocery store or whatever. But people will have a problem if you just lay down in the middle of the sidewalk, refuse to move, and expect somebody to take you to the grocery store and back home. Like, it's about what your next plan is. Like, are you able to take that like moment to like feel your natural defensive response come up and make the choice to not follow that instinct, right? Because a lot of the time we will have those instinctive, but I didn't like, and you need to build the reflex to take a couple of seconds and like figure out what the next thought is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Own it. You know, even if you do, like, because you will do this, like, you're going to fuck up and you're going to get defensive about it. And the other thing, too, is, like, after that, and you're like, look, I am very sorry. I should not have said that, and I should not have gotten defensive. But if you're just, again, the apology to the shitty apology that comes after the double down, like, it's just like, no, absolutely, because now you're gaslighting me.
Yeah.
But just know again, it's your response. First, you shouldn't be doing whatever it is that you were doing. But if somebody is coming to you and telling you you need to stop, you're hurting people, that is a hand.
Hang on, I'm answering a question.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot.
And also, we did get a request. People were interested if they're, perfect. Yep. And we can also pay, so the request was that if listeners could pay you or tip you for your time and expertise here. And so, I see that Bishop put something in there right now. I wonder we could also post that on the con Facebook page if that works.
Yeah, I could do that, and I'm actually putting it in the chat now too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Yes, pay people for their knowledge and time if you can. I mean, you should.
So it is the petty tender grass for Venmo, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool, awesome.
Some person took petty tender grass on Cash App, and now I had to take out the R, and now it looks.
Very. That's why I went with Venmo.
Yeah. Cash App also, this is not related to the thing, but I just also get very confused on how they calculate their service fee. doesn't make sense. Anyway.
Yeah. No. Good. So yeah, and yeah, we can definitely well, I don't want to say definitely, but it sounds like Pat will also put that on the Facebook page. So, but again,
Yeah. Let's see here. Doing a thing. Doing a thing.
Well, Pat, thank you for hosting the first annual PJ Con.
Yeah, I can't wait for next year.
Yeah, that's actually so. That brings up a point that if you would like to leave comments, and either positive or negative, and on PJCon, and if you want to see this again next year or any other time, we're actually having the PJCon closing ceremonies tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. Jasper and I are going to come on, talk about it for a bit, talk about the experience, and take information from people in chat. So yeah, like feel free to join in on that.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And so for those of you that didn't see it in chat or just coming in, or chat didn't load for you, I just put up on the screen the Venmo for Sereia and for Bishop.
Perfect.
Yeah. So there you go. Because yes, thank you all very much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, thanks for having.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I can talk about this all fucking night.
Well, I will have a couple of follow-up questions for you two just in the chat later. So prep for that. Just regards to like what happens to this video next. But yeah, thank you very much for your time, Arcadia. So,
thank
you.
Interviewer.
It was great to meet both of you. I really
hope
to see you again.
Yeah, there's a strong reason why I have a policy of any friend of Pat's is at least an acquaintance of mine.
Well, with any luck, we'll actually like be able to meet out in public again at some point.
One day.
That would be awesome.
Point, you know.
Yeah.
You know, before the I don't even know what variant the Omega.
Yeah.
I think the Omega variant is just the last one, period. Like that's it. We're done.
Yeah.
That's it. We're all out of coronavirus.
We're all out of people to get coronavirus.
We've all just evolved into the coronavirus at that point.
We're all the coronavirus.
Humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Ready to.
Great.
All right. Well, so
I can smell food in the other room.
Oh, it's time. All right, so PJCon folks will be back at 9 for the closing ceremonies, and Subculture Shock is on tonight at 10 p.m. So we'll see you then. And thank you all again for attending.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.